Hey sweet face, welcome to another video. If you are new here, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. So if you didn't get to catch my video where I sat down and talked about the dynamic between mother and daughters in Black households, then please check that out. But today I'm trying to get more personal with who I am in my story. So I feel like I've lived so long just not being able to tell my story or not being heard, and so this is just a way for me to express how I feel. Especially as I'm getting older, I am starting to realize that a lot of things from my childhood, a lot of things that happened growing up, I'm starting to forget or black out. And there's a part of me that's really happy about that, but there's a part of me that really wants to be able to sit down and talk and be able to speak on the things that I've been through in order to help the next person. So today I'm going to be talking about my experience of not really growing up with any parental support. So like I said, if you did not get to catch my video, I morally sat down and talked about my relationship with my mom. I was trying to make certain points in the video, but as the video went on, it just turned into me more venting. So yeah, I'm not gonna try to make any points at all in this video. I just want to speak on my experience, and I guess I will just pick up from, you know, me being with my mom to me being with my dad, because I spent most of my childhood with my mom. I didn't move in with my dad until my 10th grade year. He got emergency custody of me, so prior to that time, I stayed with my mom. And a lot of that time throughout the years, I wasn't allowed to see my dad. I wasn't allowed to talk to him, communicate with him, or anything. And if you watched my last video, then you know that my mom hasn't always been the most honest person. My mom definitely over the years has been very manipulative. I spoke on how she would tell me things like, I don't think I said this in my last video, but she would tell me things like, I know once my dad had my brother, or once my brother was born, she told me that basically he didn't care about me. He went and had another family, and that he didn't love me and stuff like that. She would tell me things like, you know, basically he didn't love me, he didn't want me. If he wanted me, he would try to fight harder to get me, or things like that. Because I know at one point they were going to court and stuff like that, and she would say things, well, he's not even trying to get custody of you, he's trying to get visitation rights and stuff like that. What my mom didn't know is over time I was sneaking and talking to my dad, and actually sneaking and seeing him from time to time, because whenever I was with her mother, which is my grandmother, she would allow my dad to come and see me, come pick me up, or just allow me to talk to him on the phone. And it's like, I've been told by everyone except my mom that I basically lived with my dad the first 3 years of my life. My mom basically left, and then she decided she wanted to come back, because my dad, of course, never did what he was supposed to do and just made sure he had the correct paperwork, so that if she ever did decide to come back and take me, that she really couldn't. So that's basically what ended up happening. Is she came back to get me, called the police. She was the mother. My dad didn't have any paperwork saying that he, you know, he could tell them that she hadn't been around, but she's the mom. So that's basically what happened. And my dad actually told me that he ended up on medication after that. He ended up having to go to the hospital, and my family would always tell me about all the times that my dad would basically cry because he couldn't see me. I didn't see him for years at a time, and then my mom got married, and I talked about her husband a little bit in the last video, where he was very inappropriate with me. Something that really bothers me that I didn't talk about in that video is how my stepdad, my brother and sister were so young when my mom remarried, and of course their dad wasn't allowed to really be in their lives either, or I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't speak on it, but what I can tell you is I can't go 100% off of what my mom has told me, because there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of hole in her stories, one, and then there's a lot of things that it's like, it's hard when even her parents and everybody else is telling you one story and your mom's telling you a different story. And I know that my mom, like I said, I know that she's lied to me before. I know that she's tried to manipulate me when it comes to certain things. One thing that really became a problem for me at a young age was, as I told you guys in the last video, I didn't like my mom's husband from the moment I met him. There was just this vibe about him that I did not like. I didn't like him from the moment I set eyes on him. It's like as soon as I saw him, I knew that, you know, this was probably the first guy besides my mom's ex-husband, which is my brother and sister's dad, that we had really met. But I just, as soon as I saw him, I knew that this was somebody that I knew this was for a boyfriend, and this was somebody she was taking serious. For me to be like that young, I don't even think I was like, I probably met him when I was like 7. Yeah, 7, because they were married for like 5 years. And yeah, so I met him at a very young age, and I could not stand him from them. He would always say things to her about how he didn't like the fact that I was standoffish to him, or that I wouldn't try to get close to him, or I didn't like, that connection just wasn't there. And so over time, it became an issue of, you know, my brother was 6 months, like a baby, when my mom left their dad, and my sister's maybe like 2 years older than him. And so it became an issue that I was the oldest and I never called him dad. And so he told me in front of my mom, they called me to her room one day, and he basically said he doesn't appreciate the fact that I don't call him dad, because he does everything for me like a dad. And he's asked me why I just couldn't call him dad, and I told him it's something that I wasn't comfortable with. I have a dad, and he didn't like that. So he basically told me in front of my mom that if I continued to call him by his first name, that he would whoop me, because I called him by his first name, it caused my brother and sister to call him by his first name, was his explanation to that. And he felt some type of way because he felt like he was doing things for us, and he wanted us to call him dad. So I did not call him anything after that. I didn't call him anything. Anytime I had to address him, I just walked up to him and like told him what I had to say, or started talking. But I did not call him anything because I had a dad. That's not something I was comfortable calling him, and I didn't want to. And I think what hurt me the most is that my mom was there and basically let him say that to me or do that. And I think that's the first time that there's always had been this trust issue in between my mom, but at the end of the day, that's my mom. But that was the first time there was a really dagger, like a dagger in our relationship. My mom would leave me, my brother, my sister at home alone a lot. And something that I did not know until I got older was, of course, when she would leave us home alone, I would call my dad and I would just talk to him on the phone. But something that I didn't know was my dad would actually drive to my house and watch the house until somebody got there, or until, I don't know, sometimes he was like, I would just sit outside your house to make sure y'all okay, because I know you're in there by yourself. And my dad, anytime he did get to come and see me, because I did tell you guys about the times that my mom told me that I could go to my dad's house, and then I'd get ready, I'd get all my stuff together, and my dad would never show up. And sometimes he really would never show up, and he'd call me the next day and tell me why he didn't get a chance to, or why this or why that. But there were times where, I know there was one time in particular, I asked my dad, I said, why didn't you come get me? And he straight up told me, your mom told me I couldn't come get you because y'all were doing something this weekend. But my mom had told me that he could come get me and had me get ready and all of that, she didn't know that I was talking to him. She didn't know that I was like communicating with him outside of the times that she was allowing me to. So I asked him, you know, I was like, why didn't you come get me? I was waiting on you and stuff like that. And he told me, she told him that he couldn't come, and I told him. And I just remember being on the phone and crying and him being really upset that that happened. And it just made me think back all the times where I didn't ask him, why didn't he come get me? And or times that I wasn't in communication with him or that I couldn't talk to him, and she told me that he was coming and he didn't come. It made me think of all those times, like, you know, just how many times has she done this? Because there's been times when I've been with my dad and it gets cut off a day short, or I'm only down there for a day, and she calls and she's like, well, we're going on a family trip. Like, I remember one time she called and said, you need to bring her home because we're going somewhere together. My dad took me home, and then when I got home, I'm like, where are we going? I thought we were going somewhere. And she said, no, I just want you to come home. And I know one time I called her out on it, and I was like, you know, you didn't tell the truth or something like that. I know I didn't say lie. But I told her she didn't tell the truth, and she basically was like, so I wanted to live with my dad. I had a better relationship with my dad, and it's like she would always ask me like who I wanted to live with, and it was because she knew I wanted to live with my dad. But she would ask me, and there's times that I tell her, I don't want to talk about this, I don't want to have this conversation. I would always shut down conversations like that, and she'd get upset. But then she'd sit back, she'd be like, I promise I'm not gonna get mad, just tell me, I promise I'm not gonna be upset, and stuff like that. And then she would flip it on me. I told you guys in the last video about the incident where I ended up running away from home and going to the police station, and the police that I thought was gonna call my dad and have him pick me up ended up taking me back home. And he was a preacher, and he basically told my mom that she was wrong and all that good stuff. I'm not gonna go into detail because I talked about it in the last video, so just make sure you check that out. I talked about us running away from home. Well, not running away from home, my mom getting us out of bed at 3-4 in the morning and driving 2 hours away to women's abuse shelter for women, just for us not to even go to the shelters and turn around and come back home and have to go to school the next day. And just because she's running from her husband and all the different fights I've seen my mom in, and her having a gun pulled on her, and my sister almost being kidnapped, and like, well, her dad taking her from the house when him and my mom got into an argument, and my mama always asking me to bring her knives when she's in fights. I didn't tell my dad about her ex-husband. One, like I said in the last video, because he tried to make it seem like I would get in trouble because I didn't say no or stop. So I didn't tell my dad, and when I finally did tell him, he was asking me why didn't I, and it's because I knew my dad would go to jail. My dad's side of the family is not rational, like, especially when it comes stuff to that, and I wanted to live with my dad. So I know if I told my dad something like that, he's not gonna handle it the way that he should. He's gonna drive down there and it's gonna be an issue, and I just didn't want it to be an issue. I didn't want him to mess up the chances of me being able to live with him. Worst case scenario, he comes down here and tries to kill this guy, and now I'm stuck with my mom for the rest of my life because my dad is in jail. So my dad has always been my superhero. I've always been a daddy's girl. Like, my dad used to spoil me. So me and my mom got into a fight, and that was the first time that I kind of fought back. I talked about that in my last video, so just watch that for details. But basically, I told you guys I ended up calling my dad to, I was just sick of everything, and I called my dad and I told him what happened, and I asked him could he come pick me up. And I had maybe 2 trash bags of all of my stuff. I had like 2 trash bags of all of my stuff, and And then my dad came and got me, and I talked to the judge and told him that's where I wanted to live and stuff like that. My dad ended up getting emergency custody of me, and during that time my mom was planning to try to move to Memphis. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to. Now I felt like it was already hard for me throughout these years to try to be able to have a relationship with my dad, and I wanted to live with him so bad that I felt like once we get out of state, it's over. Like, so I ended up living with my dad, and my dad has just always been my number one person. And okay, my happiest memories of my dad is every Valentine's Day. I'm sorry. Every Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day every year was on a school day. And every Valentine's Day, my dad would come to the school, and he'd have all these balloons and bear and like candy and stuff, and he'd always make my day on Valentine's Day. Like I said, he was just like a hero to me. So when I got to live with him, I was so happy. You know, he was in this relationship, and with my brother's mom at the time, and you know, they went through, I'm not even gonna get into that because that's just a lot. And that's just, I'm not gonna get into that. There's just too many people involved, but they had a nasty, you know, break up, and we ended up living with his mom. And my dad had a really good job, and he'd be gone for like a week or two at a time. For a while I was living with an aunt of mine. I wanted to be more of a girly person. Honestly, I've always been a tomboy, you know. But there was this part of me that wanted to be girlier, and you know, living with my aunt and being around my cousin, because my cousin was very girly, I just felt like I could not be myself, and everybody felt like I was always hiding things and being sneaky. I never shared a lot of the stuff that I went through with my mom. Even if I did try to sit down and talk about it, every single thing I've been through with my mom, like, I've only talked about some surface level things that have happened when I lived with my mom to my dad's side of the family, and because of that I felt like they couldn't understand why I was hurting a lot, or they didn't understand that I was hurting. They're a family who, you know, they joke around a lot with each other, but at that time I had so many insecurities. I didn't feel pretty. I didn't feel like I deserved nice things. I didn't feel smart. So I reflected that I'm a type of person, when I'm depressed or in just bad moods, you can see it on me. And for so long I just was very depressed, and it's so hard when you feel like crap to try to pick yourself up and try to make yourself feel important and feel like somebody. It's hard as a child to put affirmations in yourself to make yourself feel okay. And for a long time I down talked myself a lot. And I think I talked about in my last video, when I finally went to therapy, you know, my therapist gave me the exercise of trying to come up with 3 things about myself that I like about myself, and I couldn't find anything. And my dad's side of the family is more of a tough love type of family, and I was at a point in life where I couldn't take anymore. I couldn't take any more tough love. Like, I had seen enough of tough love, and I'm a sensitive person. I'm a loving person. You know, it's really easy, or it was really easy to hurt my feelings, and I was just a very sensitive child, and everybody knew that about me. And so that was a part of why I was so frustrated, because I felt like if you know that this hurts me, then why would you continue to do it? And I internalized a lot of things that my mother said to me, and a lot of things that I had been through with my mother, to the point to where when I was with my dad and certain things being said to me, even if it was in a playful way, I really needed boundaries. And it's not that I can't take a joke. There were just certain things that hurt me or had a deeper stem to it that I guess my family didn't know about. In the last video, I talked about how my mom would always call me gay, even though I was a child, because I didn't have boyfriends, or there was a point in time where I just wasn't interested in boys like that, or she felt like I wasn't. And so, you know, when I would be like, she'd call me a boy all the time. And when I lived with my dad and stuff, you know, people would make jokes like and call me a dude because of how I dressed and stuff like that. But something that a lot of people don't realize is I never dressed myself growing up. And I talked about this in the last video. I wasn't allowed to go with my mom when she bought us clothes. I wasn't allowed to pick out my own clothes. Clothes were just bought for me, and they were tomboy clothes, like. And I just always wanted to, like I said, I lived with my aunt and her girls and stuff, and she'd go out and they'd go shopping, and she'd go shopping by herself, and you know, when she comes home she has stuff for her girls, because you know, just because, you know, she was out, she saw it and she wanted it for her kids. And I always envied that, because I didn't have anybody doing that for me, and I wanted it, but that's just not, growing up, that wasn't a thing. Like I said in my last video, on my mom's side of the family, children are to be seen and not heard. We didn't have an opinion when it came to the clothes we wear. We didn't have an opinion when it came to expressing ourselves. We didn't even go with my mom when she was shopping for us, other than the times that she needed to see how things fit. But other than that, we just, that type of stuff, we weren't allowed to have an opinion or pick things out. And so my dad, like I said, he worked off all the time, and I don't want to go shopping with my dad. I don't want to go shopping with my dad for clothes. Like, my dad always seen me as the son he never had. So and he didn't like certain things that I did to try to be girly. He didn't like certain things that I wore. I remember he cursed me out because I wore a spaghetti strap t-shirt around the house. Like, there was a lot of stuff I just couldn't do. Like, the person that my mom was pushing me to be was the person my dad was like trying so hard for me not to be. And so, and I'm not gonna lie to you, like, growing up, my dad to me was very intimidating. I was afraid of disappointing him all the time and letting him down. There's just a lot of times that I felt like my dad didn't stand up for me. And like I said, my dad, you know, he was my superhero. He always was cussing people out for me at one point in time. But around my 11th grade year, me going, I want to say to the 11th grade, my dad got laid off from his job because he started doing drugs. And around the same time, me and my dad just kept having issues because, you know, he'd go through my phone and he'd be upset because I'm texting a boy. He didn't want me to have any boy male friends whatsoever. And I'm not gonna lie, my dad went through my phone a few times and seen stuff that I really shouldn't have had on my phone. But at the same time, like, I'm in the 11th grade. Like, I'm 16, 17 years old. And I'm not saying that he didn't have the right to discipline me for finding things that I shouldn't have had in my phone, but at the same time my dad gave me no type of privacy whatsoever. Like, he did not want me texting a boy at all. He did not. And it's like the more he tried to push and push, it just made me not want to go against him, because at the end of the day I was just doing things that like I wanted to do or I wanted to experience, because I felt like everybody else around me, like compared to everybody else around me, I felt like I was a saint. Like, and I'm being honest, like I knew my dad had too tight of a rope around me, and looking back I could understand why. He didn't want, you know, me to get pregnant at a young, he didn't want to screw me up so that my mom could basically be like, I told you so. He didn't want, there was too much pressure on him when it came to raising me, and I can understand that now that I'm older. Just during that time when my dad would get mad at me, when we have our issues, he'd be so mad at me that he would not want to be around me. He would not want to talk to me. I would try to go and talk to him about, you know, whatever situation that or issue we had, and he didn't want to talk to me. So that was one thing that bothered me when it came to me and my dad's relationship, is communication. My dad was just kind of like a punisher. He didn't talk to me about it, didn't, like, there was no type of communication whatsoever. It was just punishment, that's it. Like, because my dad really didn't even want me to have that freedom, he would then find little problems to have with me to keep me on punishment. So there was a lot of things that I felt like I got in trouble for that were just unfair. There was just a lot of times that my dad got upset with me because of the people around me. He did not like any of my cousins' company, and to be honest, he didn't want me around any of my cousins. So I'd always get in trouble. Like, my younger cousin is a girl. She's like 2-3 years younger than me, and she would always be allowed to be outside around my other cousins and, you know, grow up with them, and I wasn't. Like, I'd always get in trouble for hanging out outside around my cousins. He'd always come outside and tell me to come in the house. I had to come in the house all the time, and it really sucked. Like, it sucked so bad, because I already don't have any friends. I'm already not allowed to go anywhere, and you keep me away from family members. So it sucked. And so I spent most of my teenage years, well, all of my teenage years, in a room, locked away. Like, and there were always comments made about, oh, well, you never come and sit in the living room. Like, my dad would be like, you never come and sit in the living room, you're always in that room and stuff. Like, I don't think he understood until I was an adult and I told him the amount of like just how badly depressed I was and unhappy I was, and constantly feeling like I'm being attacked because I'm such a sensitive child. Like, you're not allowing me to interact with anybody outside of the family, and you're not even allowing me to interact with certain people in the family. So it's like, I was miserable. But anyways, back to the point, my dad ended up losing his job because he was on drugs really bad. And I never expected, at first, I knew my dad was on drugs. I never expected it to be as bad as it is now. And because of me and him not being able to get along, I always felt like he was on drugs because of me. Like, it was my fault, because here he is trying to work this stressful job, and he's having to worry about me being back home and stuff like that. And so I felt like when he got on drugs, it was my fault. I still have trouble with that today. Like, it's like I know it's not my fault, but I just feel like my situation with him didn't help. And so yeah, I basically watched my hero, the #1 person that always had my back, my favorite person in the world, basically watched him ruin his life before my eyes. It got to the point to where I was really and mainly and truly on punishment, because like as far as taking my phone, he eventually like took my phone to use as his phone, and he couldn't afford to really even give me my phone back or give me another phone because of what he was doing with his money, and he didn't have a job. And then it got to the point to where I would get money or I would have money. I remember my aunt gave me like $200, and I remember him calling me and asking me could he borrow like the first 100. I told him yeah. I knew I wasn't gonna get it back. And then I remember him taking the second 100 from me. He didn't ask, so never got that money back. I remember when I bought my first phone and just doing things on my own and stuff like that. I remember my senior year, I was working with my then boyfriend. I was working and I would go to these jobs with him, and this might have been after my senior year. This might have been after I graduated. I was going and working these jobs with him that he would work with his family to make some extra money. Because when it came to my senior fees, prom, all that stuff, like I had to pay for everything by myself. So I remember my dad asking me one day where I was going, and I told him I was going to work, and he just was grilling me and had all these questions. And it just pissed me off, like, because I'm like, why are you trying to prevent me from making money to benefit myself when you're not helping me? And that situation got so far out of hand that was the first time my dad actually put hands on me, like tried to fight me. And I called the police on him. I called the police on him because my dad, like I said, he was on drugs really bad. My dad is strongy. So I knew if I really just unleashed all of the anger that I had inside of me, I would hurt my dad. Like, because I had so much anger build up. Like, I didn't allow him to hurt me. I protected myself and like shielded myself and stuff like that. But at the same time, I could have defended myself. And I feel like it's God that comes over my body. But there's a lot of times where I've been in situations like that where I want to speak up for myself. I want to fight back. I want to do things. And I can't. Like, the words literally, it's almost like I choke up, and it irritates me. It makes me so mad. It's like when you're sleeping and you have these dreams of you driving a car and you can't control the car. It's like that when I'm in that instant where I'm mad, I'm angry, and all I can do is really just shake and cry and be angry, and I can't get out what I want to say. I can't hit somebody like I want to hit somebody, like, and I feel like maybe it's just over time was my anxiety. I just never really stood up for myself at times that I really should have, and that was an instance where I'm glad that I didn't, but I definitely should have, because then it led to when I did go to college, I had an opportunity to go play soccer. This team asked me to basically show up to the tryouts. I had went and visited the school. They asked me to show up to the tryouts, me and like 2 other girls. I really wanted to go play soccer, but my dad felt like the school was too far away, even though it was a free education that they were offering me. He felt like it was too far away, so he did not allow me to go try out. So I ended up applying to another school behind his back because I didn't want to go to the school that he wanted me to go to. He wanted me to be right there at home and basically continuing to go to high school while he dictates everything I do while not helping me pay for anything. And so my aunt helped me apply to the school I wanted to go to, but then she did tell me that I needed to tell him. And so eventually, I forgot how I even told him. I forgot how, like, the conversation or anything, but he ended up finding out, and he was pissed. He was pissed. He didn't find out till after I went to orientation. I had an aunt that lived in the same city that the school was, so it was kind of like I went home with her for the weekend to her house, but I was going to orientation. And I ended up starting school, and I stayed at dorms the first year. And I just remember, like, you know, my dad, I think he did come up there and help me at some point move stuff in there. I know he helped me at one point with the groceries. But y'all, going to college was so like I remember when I was going to college, and basically, you know, my aunts helped me move in and stuff like that. But there was this thing of me knowing I'm going on a college campus, and I have all the clothes that I have are clothes over the years that I've collected from being in high. When I went to college, I went with all of my clothes basically fitting in one box. Well, technically two. I put all my shirts and bras and underwear in a box, and then I put all my pants in a box. And I remember me only having like maybe 2 pair of jeans, and I was so upset because it made me, I had been saying like I wanted clothes, and I had been being told that, you know, you're gonna need, like, you don't need to waste your money on clothes, you're gonna have books, and you're gonna have to do this, and you're gonna have to do that. Like, clothes is not a priority. But I really did not have any clothes, like, at all. So I remember going to school with my stuff in my box, and feeling like I had the same feeling like the day that my dad picked me up and I had all my stuff in a trash bag. Like,